In just 29 seconds, one of Britain's most beloved actors completely lost his cool on live television. What started as a chat about his latest project turned into an absolute car crash when Lorraine Kelly made a comment that Stephen Graham simply couldn't let slide. The explosion that followed left the studio in stunned silence, producers scrambling, and Graham storming off set while cameras were still rolling. Before we dive into this absolute mess, make sure you subscribe to this channel. We bring you daily videos exposing Britain's darkest scandals, the moments the tabloids don't want you to see, and the confrontations that show the real faces behind the fake smiles. Last night's episode of Lorraine was supposed to be straightforward enough. Stephen Graham, the Scouse powerhouse who's given us everything from This Is England to Boiling Point, was there to talk about his new film project. The morning show slot, the friendly orange sofa, the usual cozy atmosphere that Lorraine Kelly's built her entire career on. But what viewers witnessed instead was a complete breakdown of professionalism that nobody saw coming. It started off pleasantly enough. Graham walked onto the set looking relaxed, dressed casually in jeans and a dark jumper. He gave Lorraine a polite hug, settled into the sofa, and the cameras started rolling. Lorraine kicked things off with her trademark chirpy energy, congratulating Graham on his recent success and asking about his new film, a gritty drama about working-class struggles in Liverpool. Graham was passionate as he spoke, his Scouse accent thick and genuine as he described the project. This film, it's about real people, yeah? Not the glamorized version you see in most movies. It's about families who are struggling to put food on the table, who are working 2, 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. That's the story I wanted to tell. Lorraine nodded along, smiling that practiced smile she's perfected over decades of television. Yes, very important stories to tell, she said, but there was something in her tone, something a bit dismissive, like she was just waiting for her turn to speak rather than actually listening. And you've always been drawn to these kinds of roles, haven't you? Lorraine continued. The grittier, the darker characters. Is that just what comes naturally to you? Graham shifted slightly, his brow furrowing just a touch. Well, I wouldn't say it's just about dark characters. It's about authentic characters, real people with real struggles. That's what interests me as an actor. Of course, Lorraine said, waving her hand dismissively. But you have to admit, you do seem to play a lot of, how shall we put it, rough types, criminals, thugs, that sort of thing. The studio went a bit quieter. Graham's jaw tightened, but he kept his composure. I play complex characters who happen to come from working-class backgrounds. There's a difference between that and just playing thugs, as you put it. Lorraine laughed, that high-pitched television laugh that sounds friendly but lands wrong. Oh, don't be so sensitive. I'm only having a bit of fun. But seriously, have you ever thought about branching out, playing someone a bit more, I don't know, refined? Sophisticated? Graham stared at her for a moment, and you could see something changing in his expression. His eyes hardened. Refined? What exactly are you trying to say, Lorraine? Nothing bad, Lorraine protested, still smiling but clearly not reading the room. I'm just saying, you're such a talented actor. Surely you'd like to show people you can do more than just play the hard men from council estates. More than that? Graham repeated slowly. His voice had dropped lower, quieter, but somehow more intense. Do you understand how insulting that is? Do you have any idea what you're actually saying right now? Lorraine's smile faltered for the first time. I'm not being insulting, Stephen. I'm just asking if you'd like to explore different types of roles. No, you're not, Graham shot back, leaning forward. You're suggesting that the characters I play, the people I represent on screen, they're somehow less than. That working-class people are less refined, less sophisticated, less worthy of being the focus of important stories. The camera operators were clearly unsure where to point their lenses. One zoomed in on Graham's face, capturing the anger now openly displayed there. Another pulled back to get both of them in frame, showing Lorraine's increasingly uncomfortable body language. Now you're putting words in my mouth, Lorraine said, her Scottish accent getting a bit stronger as her defensiveness kicked in. That's not what I meant at all. Then what did you mean? Graham demanded. Because from where I'm sitting, You've just spent the last 2 minutes suggesting that playing authentic working-class characters is somehow beneath me. That I should aspire to play posh people instead, because that would be better. I didn't say better, Lorraine countered, but her voice had lost its warmth. Now she sounded irritated, like Graham was being deliberately difficult. I'm simply pointing out that you have range as an actor, and maybe you could use it. I do use it, Graham said, his voice rising now. Every single role I take requires range. Do you think playing someone from a council estate is easy? Do you think there's no skill involved in that? The arrogance of that statement is unbelievable. Lorraine's smile had completely vanished now. Her face had gone hard, her eyes narrow. I think you're being oversensitive, Stephen. This is a light morning chat show. We're meant to be having a pleasant conversation. Pleasant? Graham laughed, but there was no humor in it. You've basically insulted everyone I've ever played, everyone I come from, and you want me to sit here and have a pleasant conversation? Oh, for goodness sake, Lorraine snapped, and now the mask was fully off. The sweet television presenter persona had cracked, revealing something much sharper underneath. This is ridiculous. I was paying you a compliment, suggesting you could do more. There you go again, Graham pointed at her, his finger jabbing the air. More. As if what I do isn't enough. As if the stories of working-class people aren't enough. Do you hear yourself? Lorraine sat back, crossing her arms. I hear myself perfectly fine. What I'm hearing from you is someone who's looking to be offended. I've interviewed hundreds of actors, Stephen, and I've never had anyone react like this to a simple question about their career choices. Maybe those other actors were willing to let your snobbery slide, Graham fired back. Maybe they were happy to sit here and pretend they didn't notice you looking down your nose at the people they represent. But I'm not going to do that. Snobbery! Lorraine's voice went up an octave. How dare you? I have never been a snob in my entire career. I'm from Scotland, from a normal family. Don't you dare suggest I'm some kind of elitist. Then stop acting like one. Graham's voice was loud enough now that you could hear it echoing slightly in the studio. Stop suggesting that working-class stories and working-class characters are somehow lesser than middle-class or upper-class ones. Stop implying that an actor needs to move on from playing real people to playing fancy people. Lorraine's face had gone quite red. I never said lesser. I never said that word. You're completely twisting everything I've said. Am I? Graham challenged. Because I think anyone watching this with half a brain can see exactly what you were implying. The subtle little digs, the suggestions that I should be doing something better with my career. It's classic class prejudice, Lorraine. And the fact that you don't even recognize it makes it worse. Class prejudice? Lorraine was nearly shouting now. That is absolutely outrageous. I grew up in a 2-bedroom flat in Glasgow. Don't you lecture me about class. Then you should know better, Graham shouted right back. You should understand why what you said was so offensive. But instead, you're sitting there defending it, doubling down on it, making it worse. There was a moment of silence. The studio crew clearly didn't know what to do. You could hear someone whispering urgently in the background, probably a producer trying to figure out whether to cut to commercial. Lorraine took a deep breath, visibly trying to compose herself. When she spoke again, her voice was cold and measured. Stephen, I think you've misunderstood the tone of this conversation. This is a daytime show. We're meant to be having a light, fun chat. If you can't handle a few simple questions without flying off the handle, then perhaps you're not ready for this kind of interview. Graham's eyes went wide. Not ready? Are you seriously trying to make this about me not being professional? After what you've just said? I'm saying that you've taken a completely innocent conversation and turned it into some kind of confrontation, Lorraine said, her voice dripping with condescension now. And quite frankly, it's embarrassing for both of us. The only embarrassing thing here is your attitude, Graham shot back, and the fact that you can't even apologize or admit that maybe, just maybe, your questions came across as insulting. I'm not going to apologize for doing my job, Lorraine said firmly. I asked perfectly reasonable questions. If you chose to interpret them as attacks, that's on you, not me. Graham stared at her for a long moment. His jaw was clenched so tight you could see the muscles working. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but intense. You really don't get it, do you? You genuinely can't see what you did wrong here. Because I didn't do anything wrong, Lorraine insisted. You're being oversensitive and, frankly, Quite rude. Rude? Graham repeated. I'm being rude? You insult my work. You insult the people I represent. You suggest that working-class stories aren't good enough, and I'm being rude for calling you out on it. I never said any of those things. Lorraine's voice had gone shrill now. You're putting words in my mouth, creating arguments out of thin air. This is absurd. It's not absurd, Graham said, standing up now. The microphone pack at his waist became visible as his jumper rode up slightly. What's absurd is sitting here listening to someone who's supposed to be a professional broadcaster display this level of ignorance and then refuse to acknowledge it. Sit down, Stephen, Lorraine said sharply, pointing at the sofa. We're in the middle of an interview. No, Graham said simply. No, I don't think I will. Lorraine's face was a picture of shock and anger. Excuse me? I said no, Graham repeated, reaching for his microphone pack. I'm not going to sit here and be talked down to. I'm not going to pretend this is okay. And I'm certainly not going to let you paint me as the problem when you're the one who started this whole thing with your snide comments. Stephen, sit down right now, Lorraine demanded, her voice full of authority. You're making a scene. Good, Graham said, unhooking his microphone and setting it down on the sofa. Maybe people need to see this. Maybe they need to see what happens when someone actually challenges the casual classism that's so normalized on shows like this. Casual classism? Lorraine was on her feet now, too. How dare you? I have spent my entire career championing ordinary people, highlighting their stories, giving them a voice. Have you? Graham challenged. Because right now you're telling one of those ordinary people that he should be ashamed of the roles he plays, that he should move on to something better, something more refined, something more suitable for someone of his talent. That is not what I said. Lorraine was practically screeching now. You're completely misrepresenting everything. Am I? Let's ask the viewers at home. Graham gestured to the cameras. Let's see what they think when they watch this back. Let's see if they think your questions were innocent, or if they can hear the same condescension I heard. Lorraine's mouth opened and closed a few times. She seemed genuinely lost for words. A producer stepped partially into frame, trying to get someone's attention, but nobody was paying attention to him. This is unbelievable, Lorraine finally managed. In all my years of broadcasting, I have never been treated with such disrespect. And in all my years of acting, I've rarely been disrespected quite so thoroughly in an interview, Graham countered. So I guess we're even. You need to leave, Lorraine said suddenly. If you're going to behave like this, you need to leave my show. Oh, I'm leaving, Graham assured her. Don't worry about that. But I'm not leaving because you're telling me to. I'm leaving because I have too much respect for myself to sit here and take this. Fine, Lorraine snapped. Go, walk off. Show everyone what a professional you are. I'd rather show them what someone with principles looks like, Graham said. Someone who won't just smile and nod when they're being insulted, just because it's easier. Nobody insulted you, Lorraine shouted. All pretense of television friendliness gone now. You came on here with a chip on your shoulder, looking for a fight. A chip on my shoulder? Graham laughed bitterly. That's classic. Anytime someone from where I'm from stands up for themselves, they've got a chip on their shoulder. Anytime we don't accept being looked down on, we're being difficult. That's not what I meant, Lorraine started. But Graham cut her off. Yes, it is. It's exactly what you meant. And it's exactly the attitude I've been talking about this whole time. But you can't see it because you're so deep in it. Lorraine opened her mouth to respond, but Graham was already moving. He stepped away from the sofa, heading toward the edge of the set. The cameras followed him, unsure whether to cut away or keep rolling. This is ridiculous, Lorraine called after him. You're being absolutely ridiculous. Graham stopped and turned back to face her. You know what's ridiculous, Lorraine? The fact that you still think you're in the right here. The fact that you still can't see what you did wrong. That's what's ridiculous. I asked you about your career, Lorraine protested. That's literally my job. Your job is to interview people with respect, Graham said. Your job is to ask questions that don't come loaded with classist assumptions. Your job is to recognize when you've overstepped and have the grace to acknowledge it. But you can't do any of those things, can you? Get out, Lorraine said quietly, but her voice was shaking with rage. Just get out. I'm going, Graham said. But before I do, I want to make something very clear. The characters I play, the stories I tell, they matter. They matter just as much as any period drama or romantic comedy or whatever you think is more worthy. The people I represent, they deserve to have their stories told with dignity and authenticity. And any actor worth their salt would be proud to play them. Nobody said they didn't matter, Lorraine said, but her voice had lost some of its conviction. You did, Graham said simply. Maybe not in those exact words, but that's what you communicated, and that's what I'm calling out. He turned again, heading for the studio exit. This time Lorraine didn't call after him. She just stood there, her arms crossed, her face still red with anger, and what might have been embarrassment. The cameras kept rolling as Graham reached the edge of the set. He pushed through the curtain that separated the studio from the backstage area, and then he was gone. The sound of the curtain swishing closed was picked up by the studio microphones, a final punctuation mark on the whole disaster. Lorraine stood there for a moment longer, staring at where Graham had disappeared. Then she seemed to remember where she was, that cameras were still on her. She turned to face them, her expression attempting to regain some composure. Well, she said, her voice tight. That was unexpected. She sat back down on the sofa, smoothing her skirt, trying to look calm. But her hands were shaking slightly, and her smile looked painted on. We'll be right back after this break, she said to the camera, and her voice cracked just slightly on the last word. The screen cut to commercial, but the damage was done. What was supposed to be a pleasant morning chat about a new film had turned into a full-blown confrontation about class, respect, and the casual prejudices that still permeate British media. Stephen Graham had walked off the set rather than sit there and accept what he saw as disrespect, and Lorraine Kelly was left sitting alone on her sofa, the friendly facade she'd built her career on cracked wide open for everyone to see. The irony wasn't lost on anyone watching. Here was Lorraine Kelly, who'd built her brand on being the friendly, accessible, down-to-earth presenter, being called out for the exact opposite. And here was Stephen Graham, often cast as intimidating characters, showing that real intimidation comes from standing up for your principles, not from playing tough guys on screen. The clip would undoubtedly go viral within hours. Social media would explode with takes, with people analyzing every word, every expression, every moment of the confrontation. Some would side with Graham, praising him for calling out classism and refusing to back down. Others might side with Lorraine, arguing that Graham overreacted to innocent questions. But one thing was certain: nobody would forget watching one of Britain's finest actors walk off one of Britain's most popular morning shows because he refused to be disrespected on live television. As Graham pushed through the backstage doors, leaving behind the chaos he'd created, the studio crew stood in stunned silence. This wasn't just another celebrity walkout. This was something bigger, something that spoke to larger issues about how we talk about class, about working-class stories, about the assumptions we make and the prejudices we hold without even realizing it. And it all played out in less than 15 minutes of live television that nobody involved would ever forget.